When you're lying in bed at night, do you ever randomly remember some relatively minor social missteps or poorly chosen words you said years earlier? And then beat yourself up over it even though it really wasn't a big deal? If so, what happened? In 7th grade, a cute girl asked me to sit next to her. I said my mom won't let me sit next to girls. My mom said no such thing. If you said cute girls you'd have been a total baller. So close. That level of smoothness eludes me to this day. I accidentally mixed up an inside joke with the wrong friend group with disastrous results. Friend group number 1, the joke was when someone calls and asks who's all there, we would add Daryl to the list of names. Daryl wasn't a real person. The joke wasn't really funny, and made no sense out of context, but I guess that's why it was an inside joke. Friend group number 2, I was hanging out playing some drinking games with a bunch of people that I hadn't hung out with in a while. It was a kind of get-together to remember a friend that they had who had recently died in a car accident. I didn't know him that well, but I was always down to party. Anyway, the phone rings, and the person who answered started listing off names. Sorting my cards for another round of presidents and assholes, I offhandedly said, "Hey, and Daryl." It was the typical record scratch moment where everyone stopped and looked at me. Daryl was the name of the friend who had just died. This happened in 2002 and I still think about it all the time. Daryl was there in spirit and appreciated that you, at least, remembered he was there. When I was in 5th grade, our teacher said a joke in front of the class and everyone laughed, including myself. After the laughter died down, a girl looked up at me and said, "You have a really damn disgusting laugh, ew." I became so self-conscious about laughter since that specific day, and after years I have trouble actually laughing. My brain kinda made it a habit to just smile or slightly chuckle at something, even if it is really funny. Edit, the girl's last name, when translated from my native language to English, is Cock. Have a nice day. Just belt it out. Fuck that bitch. I went through a phase where I scolded people for reading Harry Potter because my parents told me it was evil. Lots of awkward situations because of that. Oh my god, I can relate to scolding people for stupid shit that didn't matter. My parents were ultra-religious and taught me to have a really messed concept of men, sex, love, and relationships. When I was in middle school, I scolded so many of my friends for having crushes or getting boyfriends. I remember I lost one friend because I told her that it was disrespectful of her to have a boyfriend while also having a crush on Michael Bublé. I said some shit like her having a crush on Bublé while dating someone else was almost as bad as cheating. I always cringe and facepalm whenever I remember how much of a self-righteous dick I was. I totally deserved to be friend dumped. Junior prom, I blurted out during dinner to my date, "I'm so bored," and I have no idea why it came out of my mouth. I'm pretty well-mannered and quiet. I forget how I tried to play it off, but I felt so bad. I was sitting in a small group of friends in school, and my crush, literally the love of my life at that point, admitted she liked me. It was the happiest moment of my entire life. So naturally I said, "Ew," in front of everyone. This was 2nd grade and I still think about it weekly. My friend in 2nd grade made fun of me for liking a girl. He is now married to said girl. Edit, we had to send away to NASA to tabulate the number of people who said some form of "he was playing the long game." I'll keep you guys posted. Good. Now he has cooties. Who's laughing now, asshole? For most of my education, I went to public school and like most kids, I was socially awkward. For high school, I received an academic scholarship to a private Catholic school. It was a really big deal for my family. I didn't know anyone at the new school. Between an odd combination of academics, sports and the tail end of puberty, I became very popular in this new school. I wasn't used to the attention and it definitely got to my teenage head. Nearly all of my social circles became around the new school and not with my old local friends. I'm in my junior year, I head to a McDonald's for lunch with a few friends from the new school. Working the counter, I see a girl who I used to go to public school with that I used to have a crush on. She just lit up when she saw me, she was so excited, and I was a shitty teenager and I just ignored her. I pretended I didn't recognize her. She looked so deflated when I didn't acknowledge her. Note this was the 90s. My family moved a few times after that. I settled down in a different part of the country after university. I never made it back to that town. I've relived that asshole moment for years now. Fast forward to one of those nights when I relive that moment, and I decide to look her up on Facebook to apologize. I find out she died 10 years ago in an auto accident. Since I found out her fate, I feel even more awful about that moment. When I was 11, it was my first day at a new school and all the other students were also new. The maths teacher started our first class by asking each of us about our education background, what school we came from, what they taught in our last year's maths class, etc., just trying to get a general idea of what kind of students he was dealing with. Thing is, I was so nervous that I spaced out for a bit and got lost in my overthinking mind, so I didn't hear the teacher's questions to my classmates. When it got to my turn, the teacher just said, "Now tell me about you," assuming I understood what kind of information he was expecting. I just went straight into a monologue that started with, "So I was born in the south zone of the city, but my mom decided to move to our current neighborhood a few months after divorcing my dad." And went on and on giving some very specific details about my short life. Everyone had a really confused look on their faces, and as soon as I realized the teacher was also completely lost, I stopped talking and went instantly red. The teacher then said, "That's all really great, but I was only interested in what happened last year, not the last 10, and everyone started laughing. Next day nobody remembered it anymore, but 12 years later it still comes to mind in pretty random moments. Edit, a typo. I think that is the key takeaway from these stories. No one remembers them but you. Freshman year of high school. It was one of those days before school starts and you meet your teacher and your parents are there. My teacher was handing me a piece of paper and I didn't see the paper, so I shook his hand. He said, "Oh," and my mom said, and I panicked and said, "I just wanted to be polite." So I still want to die when I think of that. Bruh, I can't even begin to pinpoint one event. I guess one thing is when I was 11, I asked my teacher if I could go to the bathroom 3 times during class and told me no. And well, sure enough, I couldn't hold it any longer and there's bullying for the next 6 months. Literally shakes me in bed about how I have never felt that low before. Somehow I managed to live through it though, lol. We all got flaws. Mine is a bladder that urinates prematurely. Fuck teachers like that. You're not going to miss the most important lesson of your life if you're gone for 3 fucking minutes. I'd just get up and leave and deal with the consequences. It'd be better than pissing yourself. But at that age, you truly don't know what the right decision might be. I was visiting Portland for a wedding that lined up with my birthday as well. We went out to celebrate and finished the night at a karaoke bar. Realizing I'm too drunk to sing, I pick My Name Is by Eminem as my song to perform. There's 2 versions of that song. One is the original release, the other tamed down, which you most commonly hear today. The woman controlling the music put on the original, and off I went. One of the lines at the end is, "Running over lesbians in a spaceship while they screamin' at me, let's just be friends." I finish the song and I'm met by applause from my friends and one other table. The rest of the place is silent. The DJ goes, "Nice job." Don't know if it was the best choice for Gay Women's Night though, and at that moment I wanted to leave my skin. My party trick in high school was that I could rap the fast part of Rap God. When I was a freshman in college, I was hanging out with my friends one night. We were all pretty drunk, but I was probably the most wasted. So I decided to bust out my old party trick. "Hey guys, turn on Rap God." Somewhere out there is a video of me lying wasted on the floor of a dorm room, rapping Rap God as fast as my drunk little mouth would go. Chloe, if you're reading this, can you delete that video for me? Fuck no, dude. I was in the 4th grade and it was Valentine's Day. I was the new kid in school and this one boy had been picking on me all year. My 10-year-old self was very non-confrontational, so I wrote a paragraph on the back of his Nerd's Valentine explaining that I don't like it when he's mean to me, and I don't understand why he has to be. He couldn't read my handwriting and brought it to the teacher, who made me read it aloud to both of them. I think about that day every day of my life. He even ended up finding me online and contacting me to apologize a few years ago, but all I can think of is the cringe. I think you were very brave. Thanks mom, you always know how to make me feel better, smiley face. When I was in the 4th grade, I lived in the middle of nowhere and there was practically no minorities, just white country people. This Mexican family had just moved in and could barely speak any English, and I befriended one of the kids my age in school. He came over to my place and we were both joking around about his bad English. Just doing what kids do. I would pretend to speak with his accent and then he would copy, and it was silly, stupid and innocent. My mom told me I was being really inconsiderate and how uncool it was to make fun of someone for not being able to speak English. I felt terrible. The next day at school my friend came up to me and started joking with me again, but I just shook my head and looked down at my desk in embarrassment. He had no idea what was wrong and I was too young and dumb to be able to explain my behavior to him. As I grew older I spent probably 20 years thinking about that day and how much of a shit I was to be friendly one day and then without explaining anything just stop talking to him out of embarrassment. I felt really bad about it for a long time and often laid awake at night thinking about it. I ended up finding him on Facebook about a year ago and we friended each other, so I told him how bad I felt about it and apologized. He just laughed it off and said it was no big deal and he was still really thankful to find someone as friendly as me when he didn't know anyone here. He said he figured my mom had said something to me about it and it never bothered him. I don't know if maybe he was just being nice to me or not, but it was such a relief to hear it. It really felt like a weight had been lifted off of me. This happened back when I was 6th or 7th grade. Me and a couple of friends were browsing the neighborhood our school was in after the school day was over. We happened on a bus stop with couple of girls seemingly our age. We stopped and tried to chat them up, but their bus came soon after and they had to go. We see their bus stop at a traffic light not 20 meters away and one of us says, "Let's run to the next stop." Nobody thought to ask, then what, and off we were, sprinting madly behind the bus. Surprisingly enough, we somehow made it to the next stop just as the bus was arriving. Then the doors opened, the girls sat there giggling and we did nothing. Literally. I even remember it like the bus driver held the doors a bit longer, but I might be imagining it as the memory is so old. We just sat there, trying to catch our breaths as my lungs burned. And then the doors closed and the bus went off to the next stop. And none of us said anything. We just walked it off, went on to the next stupid shit we would do. I don't know about any of the other guys, but this still haunts me as one of the cringiest moments of my life so far. I'm like a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught one. Was talking with a black friend of mine, and we were discussing random haircuts and styles we would get if we were other races. I said I wanted that common look, he thought I said that common look. I meant the rapper. Shaved head with the knees trimmed up goatee. It didn't dawn on me until a week later why he gave me that weird look after I said it. He thought I was saying, that common look every black guy has. Still makes me twitch every once in a while. In 7th grade, 06 for me, I had just started watching more anime on Toonami and was really into it. One day we had to do a paper describing ourselves coming back from summer break and the class had to put a person to a description. I named my favorite jacket that I wore every day, Takeshi, for fuck knows why, and the cutest new girl in the class read my description out loud and in it I described the love for my jacket and how I had named it was it is. The cute girl looks weirded out, stares at the class and goes, "What weirdo names their jacket?" Once no one guessed who it was I piped up and said, "Well maybe they aren't here today," trying to cover myself. My dumbass forgot though that this was an in-class assignment. And the teacher said, "No, it had to have been written by someone here?" Finally one of my friends goes, "Hey 4X, aren't you like the only one in class who plays soccer?" Also written in my description. I sunk in my seat as we moved on to the next description. I wake up sweating feeling that jacket still on my shoulders. Edit, really did not expect the attention and upvotes on one of my most remembered cringy moments. Please stop upvoting before the cute girl in class recognizes me. She knew the person she was insulting was right there in the room. That was a very mean thing for her to say. She's here in this thread. She's watching us. 4th grade classroom, we were having a face-off between students on who could name the capital of whichever state our teacher named. I had been on a roll getting a few correct in a row. Then the teacher says Kentucky. With all of the enthusiasm and seriousness in the world, I screamed, "Frank fart." Everyone was dying laughing except for me, at the time. Looking back, it cracks me up that I was so upset about it. I was in 5th grade or so and I was sitting in class with a couple classmates. We were talking about Weird Al songs we liked. This one girl asked, "Have you heard some Weird Al song?" And I followed with, "Have you ever heard I'm So Sick of You?" which I guess they hadn't heard because she looked immediately down at the desk, sort of somber, and the dude did a little, ho-hoo, as if I did a nice burn. I guess they thought I was telling this girl I was so sick of her. I had no clue at the time though, so I just let it ride, sad face, still feel bad about that one. You reminded me of a similar situation for me, except I meant it. A girl my buddy had given my number to wouldn't leave me alone, calls at all hours, follows me in the halls, tries to sit with me at lunch. I blocked her number and avoided her at all costs. One day at lunch she sees me, beams at me, and makes a beeline right for me. I'm with all my buddies and she stands there looking at me and waiting for me to ask her to sit down. Instead, the first thing to pop into my head was to grab a quarter in my pocket, stand up, show it to her, and at the top of my voice yell, "Here's a quarter, go buy yourself some friends." I then bounce it off the table at her and it hits her square in the forehead, and all she does is stand there while the entire lunchroom explodes in laughter. She runs out with tears streaming down her face. I calmly sit down and continue eating. It was so out of character for me, skinny, introverted band nerd, that it was the talk of the school for weeks about how brutal that was. I still think about it and it's been 25 years. Edit, don't give me awards for being an asshole. This is so mean that I think it's only fair that you still think about it after 25 years. When I was 6, my teacher asked us what's our parents' occupation. I said my mum does the dishes, and after 5 minutes of explaining what she does at home, my teacher just took it as my mum is a housewife. My mum is a chemistry teacher, and I told her that I said that when I was 12. You really can't blame me. I didn't really think about where my mum went during her work hours, I just knew she went somewhere, and just kept playing with my toy cars which I stole from my brother. 6-year-olds say weird shit. I doubt your mom or your teacher ever thought anything of it. Yeah, my mum just laughed at me, and then forgot about it. In 8th grade one farted once, and a few minutes later, someone smelled it and asked who did it. They asked if it was me and I just started crying. I used to be very sensitive and so I thought they were accusing me and felt really bad, so I cried. It's partially because of that I am now much less emotional, and tend to keep my emotions bottled up. Edit, clarified that I bottle up my emotions. And tend to keep them bottled up. Do you mean the farts or your feelings? Both actually. But I was mostly talking about the feelings. When I walked down the aisle at my wedding, I was so nervous and focused on not tripping, that I did not acknowledge my dad. I didn't realize this until I saw the video my aunt had made for me. You can see my dad lean in to give me a kiss on the cheek, but I just keep walking. He kind of shrugs and then goes to sit down. It's been 18 years and this still flashes through my head when I'm trying to fall asleep. Also, that time I was trying to get to the school bus and the sidewalk was icy, so I slipped and fell really hard on my butt. The kids on the bus laughed at me, so I chose to sit there with my head down, wishing I could disappear, while the bus drove away and I walked a mile home, yes, in the snow, uphill, both ways. Yeah, my dad and I both forgot to hug each other. We did it during the rehearsal and everything, but the day of I think we were both trying not to trip, so we forgot. He felt worse about it than I did. I was visiting my cousin about 4 months ago and we didn't have the same greeting handshake. So it was like that really weird thing with your hands where you end up in some super awkward handshake. Last night I thought about this like 20 minutes and blamed myself. SMH, that was super unnecessary. Handshake anxiety is real and I dread it. I went to Dairy Queen with my daughter. She brought along her kitten. The cute girl at the walk-up window asked my daughter what the kitten's name was. Princess, was the response. Smiling and feebly attempting to make conversation, I said, today, to indicate that my daughter changed the cat's name frequently. I got a dirty look and the girl left the window to go make whatever cold treat we had ordered. It wasn't until later, on the walk home, that I realized that she thought I was telling her to hurry the hell up and make my order. Still haunts me years later for some reason. A couple of years ago I was at the drive-up window at my bank. When the transaction was finished, I started to raise my hand to wave goodbye to the teller, but instead of waving, I started to flip him off. It happened completely subconsciously. I don't think I was able to stop it in time because he had a shocked look on his face. I eventually apologized, but I still feel horrible shame over it. Every time I see him the shame comes back. Plus now I have a crush on him. My weed guy came over to my apartment and tried to give me a handshake that involved a fist pound and other not-so-complicated gestures. I totally fumbled it and he said, "Oh man, just hold up and let's try that again." So we tried again and I fumbled again. He just sighed, sold me some weed, and left. I've never felt so white. I ended up getting a new weed guy because I was so embarrassed. Last year I saw a 4-yo kid with his father, and the kid wants to go to X place but the father wants to go home, so the kid was crying and slowly running to X place and the father was calling him to return now, and dumb me said to the father, if you want I'll go get him for you, and there was a woman laughing at that, and the father with a WTF face said, no, thanks. In primary school, this girl really looked like my friend from the back. I went up to her, tapped her on the shoulder and said hi, then played it off like I didn't just mistake her for someone else and left. That was probably 23 years ago now. Back in 6th grade a new girl came to our school. We were making introductions at lunch and getting along fairly well. She lived in my neighborhood so I saw her and her brother get on the bus in the morning. Her brother was a bit shy on the bus and didn't talk to anyone. I saw him at lunch on my way to my table to eat and waved. He did a weird head bob thing and smiled. I thought he was being a goof. I laughed and turned to the new girl and said, what's with your brother, why is he acting retarded? Well, she broke out into tears and ran away. My friend turned to me and said, what the fuck is wrong with you, and ran after the new girl. Turns out her brother is actually retarded. I stole my sister's boyfriend when I was 16. I'm not proud of it and she's still mad at me. He was 8 years older than me. Should have added that. Went swimming with a group of friends as a kid to the local pool. Probably 11. Girl in the friend group jumped on my back while I was underwater. She was just being playful. It freaked me out because I was coming up and already short of breath. But I played it off trying to be cool. An hour later I was describing what happened to my other friend and explained, and then I felt this big fat weight on me and I couldn't breathe. I didn't realize the girl was behind me. She burst into tears, and she ran home crying. I have never felt so small. I remember that moment and still feel terrible 20 years later. I learned in that moment that it's important to choose my words. Because I wanted to describe how I felt being underwater and scared, but I didn't have a developed way to articulate it. Because I used those words, she became the object of the story. It became about her fatness, then about my scaredness. I didn't mean to call her fat, but I did. And to any bystander or observer, they would justly see me as a bully. This is why I can't sleep till the sun comes up.